Lonene Ray Rogers was born October 18, 1951, and went by Lonnie. She was described as caring, loving, empathetic, and a great mother. Lonnie was born deaf, and during high school, she was excluded from a trip to a music concert because of her disability. But she was a very determined individual and would raise enough money by holding a car wash for her and her friends to go to the concert themselves. When she was 29 years old, she was married to Clinton Bud Rogers, who was also deaf, but his was the result of a car accident as a child. Lonnie was beautiful, kind, and gentle, whereas Clinton was short-tempered and had been involved in many crimes since his childhood. She had hoped his life of crime would eventually stop, but it never did, and she was always left in a state of shame by him. He was even in jail for theft when his son Aaron was born. In late 1980, with alleged abuse from Clinton toward her and the children, they would separate. However, around the holidays that year, she felt bad for him and agreed to let him come stay with her and his two children, 5-year-old Allison and 3-year-old Aaron, but only under the condition that he would leave again after the holidays. By January 6, 1981, Clinton was still there and refusing to leave, so Lonnie asked her father for money to help her leave instead, and he gave her $60, which was all the money he had in his pocket at the time. That night, during a snowstorm, Clinton woke the children at 3 a.m. and took them to the babysitter's house, who was also deaf and good friends with Lonnie. He told them Lonnie was gone and he had to be at work in 3 hours, so the friend got her daughter to call Lonnie's father and told him that Lonnie was missing. Her father kicked in the door and entered the duplex the family was living in and saw that Lonnie's hearing aids, glasses, medication, wallet, and even her car were still there. He called the police to report his daughter missing, but police allegedly did not officially question Clinton because they didn't know sign language or have an interpreter. When he arrived home from work, Clinton was angry that there were people in the apartment and the door was kicked in. Police searched him and found $60 in his wallet, which infuriated Lonnie's father, prompting him to ask where he got it. Clinton would say that Lonnie gave him the money, and it is believed to be the same money she was given by her father hours before she went missing. Neighbors in the duplex told police they had heard arguing in the middle of the night, along with banging around until the early hours of the morning, but this was a usual occurrence. However, Clinton claimed he woke up at 2 a.m. and noticed Lonnie wasn't in the bed with him and she was not in the apartment and believed she had left him for another man. It was reported that when he dropped the children off at the babysitter's that he was shaking and sweaty. He said he was going to look for his wife and then went to work at 6 a.m. despite it being a blizzard. It's unknown what he was doing from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., however, because his work was only a 20-minute drive, but he claimed he was searching for Lonnie. Strangely, a pink queen-sized blanket was missing from the home, and Clinton could not explain where it went. Following their mother's disappearance, both of the children were told by Clinton never to speak of their mother and to not ask questions about her. Rumors began that others in the deaf community knew what happened to Lonnie, but were afraid to come forward for fear of retaliation from Clinton Rogers. Allison and Aaron remained with their father off and on throughout the years that followed, often being involved with children's services. Each time they were removed from his custody for neglect and abuse, they were eventually returned. At one point, they were even in foster care and also in the care of Clinton's sister. In October of 1989, Clinton told Aaron and Allison they were going to Erie, Pennsylvania to eat dinner to celebrate Aaron's birthday. Allison rode in the open bed of the pickup truck for the 25-minute drive, banging her fist on the cab windows, crying and begging to be allowed inside with her brother, father, and his then-girlfriend, Mary Overly, as it was freezing temperatures. Instead, they arrived at the Erie Police Department where Clinton told Allison he did not want her anymore because she was too much trouble. He had Allison interpret to the police that she was a bad girl and he was finished with her. When told by the police that the station was not a dumping ground for unwanted children, Clinton told them he did not care and refused to leave with her. Allison suggested the police call her aunt that had cared for her in the past while removed by Children's Services. Her aunt told police that she wouldn't take her and to let Clinton figure it out. Almost out of options, the officer asked if there was anyone else who could help Allison. Earlier that day, when called to the guidance counselor's office at school, Allison had confided in Judy, her guidance counselor and also her math teacher, about the problems that had been occurring at home. She gave Allison her phone number, telling her she could call anytime, day or night, if she ever needed anything. Allison still had the piece of paper in her pocket with her phone number on it and handed it to the police officer. Judy picked up Allison that night, and her husband, Bill, welcomed Allison into their home, and from that moment on, Allison's life changed tremendously in a good way. But the disappearance of her mother would always affect her. As an adult, she started a Facebook page dedicated to the search for her mother, Justice for Lonene. It was after creating the Facebook page that Allison received information from a woman revealing a bombshell piece of information about her father that she never knew. The woman said that in 1970, her ex-husband, along with Allison's father Clinton, were convicted of rape with a deadly weapon. Allison found it hard to believe that she never knew her father was a convicted felon, but after requesting the criminal records from the Erie County Clerk's office, the story proved to be true. Clinton had been found guilty of the crime, sentenced to 23 months in jail, but was released after 6 months due to good behavior. Today, Clinton remains free and is now in his 70s. Allison went on to earn a bachelor's degree in social work and a master's in special education. She has also written a book titled A Daughter's Journey and Story of Resilience. She continues to push law enforcement to look into this case further and hopes they will one day hold the person she feels responsible accountable once and for all. Allison's brother lived with their father until he was 16 and then lived with friends and neighbors until turning 18. She states that since 1981, there are numerous things about the case that show it was never thoroughly investigated. What happened to her mother still remains a mystery, and as of today, this case remains unsolved. Wendy Eaton was born May 26, 1959, to Joan and Roland. At the age of 15, she was in the 10th grade at Pencrest High School and lived on Moccasin Trail in Media, Pennsylvania. She was described as a good student, enjoyed scouting, camping, and church activities, and excelled at playing the piano and the guitar. On May 17, 1975, her parents left to go play golf at a local country club, and she stayed home to sunbathe on the roof outside her bedroom window. She was very interested in religion and planned to attend a singing group rehearsal at her church that night. Wendy spoke to a friend later in the afternoon and said she planned to walk to a store to purchase a gift for her older brother Richard. 5 witnesses saw Wendy 3 blocks from her home about 3 p.m. at the intersection of Indian Lane and Media Station Road headed towards downtown Media. She would vanish into thin air and was never seen again. Bloodhounds were able to track her scent to this intersection where she disappeared, but there was no trace of her elsewhere, and police believed that's where she was taken or picked up by a vehicle. In early January 1976, 3 teens were charged with extortion after they tried to collect a $10,000 payment from Roland for information about Wendy's disappearance, which they did not have. On May 17, 2021, 46 years later, police were searching and digging in the wooded area behind a home at the intersection she was last seen. The intersection is the same spot where search dogs stopped and sat down while following Wendy's scent from her bedroom, hours after her disappearance in 1975, indicating the spot where their trail had gone cold. This is not the first time they've been seen searching that area, and it's unclear what information led them back here, but they indicated that they have significant new evidence that she was indeed murdered. Wendy's mother, Joan, died in 1995. Her father, Roland, died in 2007 without closure, and as of today, this case remains unsolved. Alan Briscoe Jr. was born December 5, 1969, to Joanne and Alan Briscoe, and his friends would later call him Squeak or Squeaky. In 1985, at the age of 16, he was a student at Bartram High School, lived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and loved to play basketball and listen to rap music. It was the holidays, and his mother was working 2 jobs to make extra money. Each morning, she would call home to make sure he and his sister, 17-year-old LaTanya, were getting ready for school. However, at 7:30 a.m. on Friday, December 13th, neither of them answered her call. She tried again at 3:30 p.m., an hour after school was out, and still no answer. When she arrived home from her second job at 11:30 p.m., she discovered LaTanya had come home but was locked out because Alan had the house keys that day, so she had gone to her grandmother's house. It's unclear why she also didn't answer the routine wake-up call that morning and has refused to talk about her brother's disappearance. In a panic, Joanne began calling her friends and family to help her search for her son, and neighbors even joined in on the search that night. As the sun came up, there was still no sign of Alan, and that's when Joanne called the police to report him missing. Investigators learned that Alan's school closed early on the day he was last seen. While his mother doesn't believe he ever attended school that day, it is reported that he was there at least part of the day. However, details on what Alan might have done that day remain somewhat murky, but it is believed that he and a friend rode the subway around Philadelphia all day, then came back to their own neighborhood by bus. Alan's friend stated he last saw him exiting the bus at Woodland Avenue, and Alan told him he was going to see a female friend. While talking to police, Joanne recalled that there was one teenage boy that she had never liked and had warned Alan to stay away from him. He lived near the area where Alan was last seen after getting off the bus, but there was no evidence linking him to Alan's disappearance. It's also unclear who Alan intended to visit that afternoon. No one has ever admitted to seeing him after he walked away from the bus stop that day. Authorities don't believe Alan ran away from home. He left all his clothes behind, as well as $50 his mother gave him as a birthday present, and he had not spoken of any plans to leave home. There was some speculation that his case could be related to that of Christine Green, another Bartram High School student who went missing in April of 1985, but they have never been able to confirm any links between the two cases. Christine was also 16 years old when she went missing, but it is unclear if she and Alan knew each other, as they were not in the same grade at school. Police believe that the cases could possibly be connected since their disappearances were only 8 months apart, but they lack any firm evidence to support this theory. Years later, a Southwest Philadelphia woman who saw an age-enhanced composite of Alan called the police to say that her boyfriend looked a lot like him. However, the man told police that he was not Alan Briscoe Jr. and was not very cooperative. Alan has never been located, and as of today, this case remains unsolved. Lee Vanluvender was born July 14, 1985, to Tom and Charlene, and was described as a family man, a patriot, and an avid hunter who loved the outdoors. He graduated from Pocono Mountain West High School in 2005 and then earned a welding certificate. At the age of 22, he worked as a toll collector for the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. He lived in Bartonsville, Pennsylvania, and he and his fiancée, Leah, had a 2-year-old son named Sean. On December 4, 2007, he came home from working the night shift and got ready to go hunting. He told his mom goodbye and that he loved her after she tried to talk him into getting some sleep instead. He drove to the snow-covered parking lot off Hipsey Gap Road in Tunkhannock Township and parked his gold-colored Jeep Cherokee. Tragically, 3 hours later, a hunter found him lying murdered in the snow-covered parking lot. Evidence led investigators to believe that Lee parked in the lot, stepped outside, and began walking toward the woods to hunt. Then he circled back to his truck and engaged someone or multiple people in a fatal shootout. He had shot 2 rounds from his rifle, and 1 round hit his own Jeep. Land in that area is part of over 22,000 acres that the Bethlehem Authority owns in Carbon and Monroe counties, and it is leased to the city for its drinking water system. The Bethlehem Authority permits hunting on much of the land. Since his murder, his parents have also suffered the loss of his sister Amber on May 7, 2021, from complications of type 1 diabetes. Prior to Lee's murder, his brother Brian had also passed away. His parents have not given up on justice for their son, but sadly, there is very little information, and as of today, this case remains unsolved. Louis Anthony Mackerley was born February 15, 1977, to Harold and Sheila Mackerley. In 1984, he had 3 siblings and was a first grader at Central Elementary in Allentown, Pennsylvania. He was described as friendly and talkative, but was also a loner and a timid child who was afraid to sleep alone. On June 7, 1984, 7-year-old Louis was being cared for by his aunt while his mother was getting her tubes tied. He came home from school that day to his apartment at the 300 block of Chew Street in Allentown. He told his aunt that he was going to walk 2 homes away to a neighbor's house. He was last seen walking between 4th Street and Gordon Street. Carmen Marco, who ran Marco's Doggy Shop at 429 Gordon Street, remembered that Louis spent 45 minutes in his shop that day trying to avoid 2 teenage boys who were chasing and teasing him. He then left walking east, and his parents believed he was headed to 391 Chew Street, the home of an elderly woman he liked to visit. Another witness claimed to have seen Louis talking to an unidentified man and woman in a park near Jordan Creek, approximately 1 block from his home, about 4:30 p.m. By 11:10 p.m. that night, when Louis had not returned home, his parents reported him missing. They waited this long because he usually liked to stay out late and didn't normally return home until about 9:30 p.m. After he was reported missing, an extensive search of the area was performed but turned up no clues to his whereabouts. Louis was known to enjoy playing near water, particularly Jordan Creek, which was located a block from his apartment, and Lehigh River, which was located a little ways east from Jordan Creek. Shortly before he vanished, he mentioned that he would like to visit Dorney Park, but no trace of him was found at any of these locations. Police later found the boys they believed scared Louis, but they were cleared of any wrongdoing. Police initially focused the investigation on Louis's parents for a long period of time, but ultimately concluded that Louis had been abducted by someone outside the family. His parents took lie detector tests early on in the investigation and were ruled out as suspects. Rumors had risen that they abused and or neglected Louis, but Child Services investigated the rumors and found that they could not be proven. 5 months before he went missing, Louis told his parents, his school nurse, and a psychologist that he had been molested by a couple named Frank and Elizabeth. His parents brought him to the police to relay his story. However, police did not have enough evidence to investigate the claims, as he didn't know their last names or addresses. Louis also stated that the couple had threatened to hurt him if he ever told anyone what happened. It's unknown whether the incidents are related to Louis's disappearance, but he was strangely last seen talking to an unidentified man and woman in the neighborhood. In December 1984, David Riggs of New York City, who claimed to be a private investigator, started an organization called Search 7 with the goal of finding children who'd been abducted by strangers. Riggs announced that the organization's first case would be Louis Mackerley's. He claimed to be an expert in child abduction cases based on his graduate degree in sociology and his work with runaway children in New York City. He theorized that Louis had been abducted for financial reasons. However, in 1988, Riggs was arrested in West Virginia after he approached 5 boys and offered to pay them to take photos, which they declined. Investigators discovered that his organization had never been registered as a nonprofit, and he did not have a private investigator's license. Riggs pleaded guilty to 2 counts of attempted child abduction and 1 count of sexual abuse for the West Virginia incident. Police investigated the possibility that he was connected to Lewis's disappearance, but concluded that he was not a suspect. 11 months after Lewis disappeared, his family moved into the house on Chew Street that he liked to visit. The elderly female friend of Lewis's who had lived there was moving to a retirement home, and Lewis's family wanted to be at a place he knew and might return to. He had often played at the residence and had dreamed of living there someday. His parents were unable to make the mortgage payments for the home in spite of contributions from community members who were moved by their plight. They unfortunately filed for bankruptcy and moved to Effort, Pennsylvania in 1989. The Chew Street residence has remained vacant since they moved. Authorities believe that it's possible that the unidentified couple may have been responsible for his disappearance. Lewis was one of the first missing children featured on milk cartons, grocery bags, and billboards. His parents were married for 45 years until his father passed away and then his mother in 2018. His siblings, Harold, Edward, and Sheila, still seek answers in their brother's disappearance. His case was reopened in 1990 and then again in 2004. As of today, Lewis has never been found, and this case remains unsolved.